If you make documentaries, if you make corporate videos, if you shoot for the news, you know that interviews are absolutely the backbone of storytelling for that type of content. And so getting better at interviews so that you get what you want out of an interview subject is such an important thing to learn. So the first thing that I always have interview subjects do is I have them say and spell their name. What that does for me, well, some people are like, oh, this is kind of weird. Is this a test? I want to hear them say their name because then the interviewer gets the pronunciation of their name. If there's any awkwardness around that, they get to hear it right from the subject off the top. And having the spelling of their name right off the top of the interview clip is great for whoever is editing, because then when they're creating the titles, they know right away where they can go to have the spelling, and you know it's correct because it's right from the subject. You always want to remind the interview subject where to look, remind them that you're having a conversation, and you want to talk about answering the question in complete sentences. So if you ask an interview subject, hey, what color are your jeans? You don't want them to just say blue, unless you're doing an interview where the interviewer is going to be heard. If you're not hearing the interview's questions, you want them to answer the question, what color are your jeans, with my jeans are blue. Those sort of little things really help in the edit. As far as eye lines, right now I'm doing direct address, I'm talking right into the camera, but typically with an interview, you're looking just off of camera. And what I try to do is try to get whoever's conducting the interview to be as close to the camera as possible so that the eye line isn't way too far off. When you have somebody looking way too far to the side in an interview, as opposed to right off of the camera, it just doesn't connect as well with the subject, and plus then you start to lose. You're not able to see both of their eyes, and the shot just really does not look as good. So you try to get the interview subject to look as close to the camera as you can. You don't want to have them shifting their eyes back and forth between the camera and the interviewer. That's not a great look, and so you may need to just break in a couple times and remind the subject, hey, just remember we're having a conversation, you're looking at the person who's interviewing, and you guys are just having a conversation. As you're getting warmed up into an interview, you meet the person, you're starting to talk, maybe you're just starting the interview process and you're going through the first couple of questions. You want to take stock of their answers. Are they answering in a way that makes it seem like they are, just sitting there and in the moment reconsidering their answer, or are they just kind of delivering like a rehearsed, a pre-concluded answer that might come off as just a little bit too pre-planned? Now, of course, there's room for rehearsal. When you're shooting a corporate video and you ask the CEO, hey, what's the mission statement of your business? You absolutely want to hear the rehearsed, canned answer. But when you're shooting a documentary, you really want to have the subject kind of re-explore or relive whatever it is that you're asking them about, so that you get some of that exploratory feel in the documentary. And in the edit, it gives you options to help the audience feel like they are discovering alongside the subject whatever the answer, the truth about the subject that you're working on is, rather than they're just hearing rehearsed textbook answers being spit back into camera so that you can assemble all of your ducks in a row and make a conclusion. You may also need to play the game a little bit. That's what I call playing the game in an interview. Is you may need to ask some questions that don't really have anything to do with what exactly you're getting at. Whether it's a subject who is like uncomfortable, some people will even say like, hey, like I'm super uncomfortable on camera, I don't really like that. You may just need to give them some softball questions, some easy questions. You just need to play the game to get to what you want. You're also gonna have to kind of be ignorant sometimes. You should always be super prepped for your interviews. You should know who you're talking to. You should know what you want to get. But there's some times where you need to just ask questions and say, treat me like I don't know anything about this, so that nobody feels like they're being left out when they're watching it back and they say, oh, they keep referring to this one term, but I have no idea what that means. You got to play the game. You have to feign ignorance sometimes and put yourself in the audience's shoes to make sure that you don't want to spoon feed the audience, and you don't have to define every single word, but there are some terms where it's definitely going to be better that you explain it up front and make sure that the audience is all on board before you're able to dive deeper. Now, if you're a solo operator and so you've got a camera and you've also got to do the interview, I hope that you have a tripod. I've had to put the camera on the shoulder, the easy rig, and the interview at the same time. Those are never fun. But if you're the solo operator, what I find really helps out is that, say it's just you and the interview subject, it's great to just like narrate through your process, because there's stuff as when somebody sits down, all that kind of thing, that you have to adjust, that you have to mess around with. And so I find it great to talk to them all the way through the process, just be like, hey, like, yeah, I'm just just moving these things around, and if you can just look into camera real quick for me. Okay, awesome, looking great. And I'm just gonna move this over here. And so you're going through your process of leveling and getting in focus and all these kind of things, but you just kind of narrate through it so it isn't just this awkward silence of like, hey, I need to do a couple things, and they're just sitting there and like kind of like watching you, or like maybe they're gonna get on their phone or whatever. But if you're narrating through your process, it just diffuses the situation. It makes it feel a little bit less awkward, rather than like, oh, you need to sit there while I do this thing, and it's almost like it's a doctor's office or something. No, you want to narrate through your process, and that's a really easy way to ease into the interview, because then they're already kind of used to you and talking, and maybe you ask them a couple questions, and then when you get into the interview, it feels like you're moving right from a conversation into another conversation. So those are just a couple of my quick interviewing tips. This is not the Ken Burns masterclass. This is just kind of what I learned by both practice and observation. I hope this helps you out as you ask some questions and get some good answers.
All right, Drew, do your magic.